You know how people talk about the best money they ever spent? For some people, it was a $2,000 mattress. For others, it was their wedding day. You know what the best money I ever spent was? Hiring my first assistant. This was somewhere around 2006, about a year after I'd graduated from college. I had my blog, and I was working at a startup that I co-founded, and I found my assistant on Craigslist. She worked with me for about 10 hours a week for 3 years before she left to go to law school. And I gotta tell you, this was a huge turning point for me. It wasn't so much about the amount of money. I paid her about $20 an hour, but the two lessons that it taught me. First, hiring an assistant taught me that I could buy back my time. This was profound and later led to me hiring dozens of people for the IWT team. Second, and this was something I did not expect, it taught me how to deal with the weird reactions that I would end up getting from people. Like people telling me I was trying to act like a show-off by hiring an assistant. I wasn't. I was not trying to show off. I just wanted to save some more time. But looking back, I'm really glad that I had that experience because it taught me to invest in myself without apologizing. And my amazing assistants since that time have allowed me to accomplish so much more than the amount that I've paid. That is true leverage. There's so many things like this that I spend extravagantly on. Tailored clothing, treating my parents to special experiences, an annual retreat for the entire team at I Will Teach You to Be Rich. But there's also plenty of things I don't spend any money on. For example, look at my wrist. What's missing? A watch. You've never seen me wearing an expensive watch. Why? Because I just don't care. Or what about upgrading my apartment? If you've been paying attention, you probably have noticed that the webinars and videos we've been doing are on the exact same couch in the exact same apartment for the last 10 years. I can afford a bigger, nicer place, but I just don't care. Same goes for cars, organic meats, and sports. I can go on and on about the things I don't care about spending money on. But we all have things like this. For example, do you like spending extravagantly on eating out at restaurants? Or do you hate it and think it's a waste of money? The interesting thing is as you grow and as your financial situation changes, your preferences actually should change. People say to avoid the hedonic treadmill. You know, as you start making more, you want more. Well, that's absurd. The hedonic treadmill is real. And the more financially successful you get, the more you should explore. I just remember to continue saving and investing aggressively. And then I spend guilt-free on new experiences that I care about. I think if I'm still spending on the same things I was interested in 15 years ago alone, and that's it, then I haven't grown very much as a person. I want to be using my money for new experiences, to try new things, to see what I like and what I don't like. So how do you figure out what you actually should be spending your money on? Most of us have heard lots of advice about what to cut back on. And by the way, most of that advice is nonsensical tips like cut back on lattes. But almost none of us have ever truly learned how to spend money. Think about it. Did anyone ever teach you? Did anyone ever say, once you make $100,000, here are some things you should spend your money on? Or, here's why it's worth it for me to fly first class. Or, I spent $200 on this face cream, and here's what I learned. No one ever talks about this. And in fact, you'd be crucified for writing this kind of stuff as an elitist who's out of touch. And yet there's a huge group of people who start to earn more, and they try to change their spending by applying their invisible money scripts from the past to their new situation. And they realize something is not working, it's not clicking. It doesn't make sense for my new situation. How do most people learn how to spend? The answer is they don't. They just spend on random things like expensive shoes, new iPhones, trendy restaurants. And even as they accumulate more money, they never develop a true philosophy for how they want to spend their money. Everyone has unique preferences for what they want. So how do you figure out what you want to spend on? And just as importantly, how do you figure out what you don't care about so you can stop wasting money on it? When I look back on some of the things that gave me the most joy, many of them started from a simple, tiny experiment. For example, I have a lady who cleaned my apartment once a month. And during a crazy month at work, my apartment was a total mess. It was stressing me out. So I sent her a text asking if she could come in 2 weeks later. And when she came in and she left, my apartment was perfectly clean. I realized I didn't have to wait a month for her to clean my apartment. Turns out I'd arbitrarily set up that rule of how frequently I could do something. My new rich life means I always have a clean apartment. I always have a sharp haircut. I never run out of items at home. That tiny experiment completely changed the way I think about my rich life. I also did tiny experiments that made me realize I didn't care at all. For example, I tried a bunch of expensive skin creams and shampoos, all that stuff. I realized none of that makes a difference for me at all. Great, cost me a couple $100. Now I can happily buy Neutrogena from the drugstore for the rest of my life. And if I look back on the things I love today, coffee, this list of amazing hotels that I want to stay at one day, starting a tradition of traveling with my family, they all started with tiny little experiments. So I'd like to encourage you to start these experiments too. I love these because they transform money from a scarcity mentality of budgets and spreadsheets and don't spend money on that to serendipity and exploration and fun. This is what I want you to do. Put aside $100 a month to use for spending experiments, or make it $1,000, whatever number is meaningful to you. Automate that money into a sub-savings account. And here's the only rule. You have to spend the money every month. Now I want you to make a list of tiny spending experiments that you want to run. Feel free to get creative. Try things you wouldn't otherwise spend your money on. Here's a few ideas to get you started. You can pay someone to deep clean your home. You can get a bouquet of fresh flowers delivered to your house. You can get groceries delivered. You can buy a nice bottle of wine. You can do whatever you want and give it to charity. Pick one experiment from the list and do it this week. And if you don't like it, no big deal. Move on to the next one. But if you love it, you just found a way to live an even richer life. And at the end of 12 months, a year from now, what will have happened? Well, you'll have run at least 12 spending experiments. You'll have uncovered 12 things you either love spending on or you don't care about. And every experiment in my mind is a success because it's teaching you more about how to live your definition of a rich life. So leave a comment below sharing one spending experiment you're going to try this week.